frigid Thursday afternoon, late afternoon, evening hours, and was going to do a podcast last night during the second half of the Illinois-Penn State game, but the first half happened, and we were absolutely crushing them. So I didn't figure, one, that there would be a whole lot of intrigue to talk about live in the second half. Two, there was the Kasparas Jakucionis news before the game that I figured if we were going to get any updates, it would be afterwards with Brad Underwood, and that would age the podcast terribly in case he did say something. And three, there's a couple of football nuggets that I wanted to get to, and we just so happen to get a little bit of football recruiting news today. So a little bit more of a grab bag podcast today, but let's not bury the lead. Illinois basketball is really freaking good. Wow. Penn State, for context, not a bad team. One that would be borderline NCAA tournament quality. According to KenPom, for example, they are 53rd on KenPom, even after last night. Indiana, by comparison, is 49. So essentially the likes of an Indiana kind of team. And it's not great, but it's not bad. And that game was nowhere close to competitive. After the 11-5 start from Penn State, if I'm doing my math correctly, after that you outscored them 86-41. 86-41. You put up a 90 spot, which that is not all that unusual, to their 52. And bear in mind that Penn State, coming into this game, according to KenPom, had like a top 40 offense. So now they're 48th after what they did, or did not do, I should say, against Illinois, but that was complete ass kicking. And not at all what I expected after the Kasparas news came out. I thought that Illinois was going to cover last night. I thought that they were going to win handily. I thought this notion that there's some sort of curse about playing Penn State was, while understandable, a bit overblown, and that this matchup actually boded, is that a word, quite well for Illinois, based on the fact that Kylan Boswell would be able to keep Ace Baldwin from going off, which he had been struggling offensively anyway, Ace Baldwin had, and that Nick Kern would have someone that could counter him defensively, specifically like a Tre White or something. And we saw Illinois rotate a bunch of guys on Nick Kern last night. If you keep those two guys at bay, you were going to win the game, and that's exactly what you did. And Ace Baldwin goes down within the first few minutes. I want to get something out of the way real quick, which is going to be semi-controversial about that. I don't wish injury on any player. I wish that Ace Baldwin could have played, and then you would have won by a mere 30 points instead of 40 or 39. However, I've always had this sort of annoyance with players who sort of pride themselves on, I'm the guy who takes the charge. I'm the tough little scrappy-do guy. And actually, Ace Baldwin's more than a scrappy-do. He is actually a scrappy dude. He's tough. But when your whole identity as a player is built on taking charges and I'm the pest, okay, that's fine. But if you aren't on my team, it frankly annoys the crap out of me. He takes the charge 15, 20 seconds into the game. And yeah, there was a shoulder there from Kylan Boswell. Message sent. I don't think he meant to hurt the guy. But this is what you get occasionally when you decide that your entire identity as a player is going to be, I'm the most physical guy on the court. I'm the toughest guy on the court. You're going to get your ass knocked around sometimes. That's what happened to him. Bummer for them. Hopefully not long term. But when the game started like that, they were trying to send a message. Ace Baldwin was trying to send a message. Kylan Boswell was trying to send one right back. Who got the foul? Kylan Boswell. We'll play on. The thing is, if you insist on being the physical guy, then you were just upping the risk factor. And that's what happened to Ace Baldwin. So I hope it's nothing serious. I just don't feel that bad about it. I didn't feel bad about it last night, as they continually showed clips of him on the sideline looking like a family member died. I mean, it's a game, Ace. There's others to be played. Want to get that side note out of the way. But really, again, focus on the lead, which is Illinois yesterday defensively was unbelievable. Extended stretches of that game where I'm watching an entire possession go down for Penn State down to 5, to 4, to 3, to 2, and they have to hoist up a terrible shot. Illinois was playing defense through the entire possession, never letting up. Their ability to communicate and switch screens, or switch through the screens, is not what you would expect for a team that right now is sitting at 12-3. So 15 games in, this group of players has only played 15 games in. We're halfway through the season, and they're already playing defense like that. But most encouragingly to me is, unlike 2 years ago where you essentially got a brand new roster with Matthew Meyer and Terrence Shannon and all the freshmen, and you saw how poorly that went, this is the complete antithesis to that. It is, yes, a brand new roster. And yeah, there are young guys, but it's a good mix of older guys as well. But what Brad Underwood and the staff did exceptionally well, it appears, is find guys that actually buy into this everyday guy's mantra. A mantra, a motto, if you will, that I never fully subscribed in, because as many wins as Brad Underwood was able to amass in the early going, everyday guys would sometimes fall flat when Illinois would lay a stinker, often against the likes of Maryland or Ohio State or Penn State. It just seemed like, why do we keep doing that? Understanding you don't win every game, it also felt like there was a little bit more inconsistency in the early successful years of Brad Underwood. But hey, that right there is the world's smallest violin. Admittedly, Brad Underwood's run an exceptionally strong program now for 6 of his 8 years, successful. And I am just blown away at the fact that this team and all these new dudes has subscribed to whatever Underwood and that staff are selling. The buy-in is not something you see from a transfer-heavy team to this degree. And here they are, playing their butts off, playing exceptional defense, and that sticks. I know it is early January. As I record this on January 9th, we, in 2 months, will be finishing the season. I want to say, in fact, March 9th might be the last game of the year. March 7th against Purdue at home. And then the Big Ten season will officially end on Sunday, March 9th. So you got 2 months of conference play left. I have very little doubts that the defense is going to stick. So whatever the status of a Kasparas Jakucionis may or may not be, and we will talk about that because that is a big deal. When you play defense like that, you are going to win a ton of games. And the offense, bear in mind, Ben Humrichous was hot from 3 yesterday. Nobody else was. And you hung up 91 points with ease against a Penn State team that, metrics-wise, does not have an amazing defense, but they're not Iowa. They get after you a little bit, and they could not disrupt anything that we were doing offensively for basically the last 35 minutes of regulation. Yeah, I was watching that game when it got to 11-5 Penn State. I was a little bit nervous. I thought, boy, oh boy, I didn't want to make a mountain out of a molehill with Kasparas and think, season's over, Kasparas has forearm discomfort. And again, we don't know the extent to what's going on, though he did warm up before the game. But it was hard not to go down a bit of a pit of despair when it was 11-5 and it was Penn State on the other end of the court. And the recent history against them suggested that we would have our hands full. And then a switch flipped. And it is due to many guys, all of whom we'll talk about today, including one that I had left for dead a few weeks ago. And in fairness to myself, I think a lot of Illini fans probably left for dead as well. So before we get too far into this, and I see there's some folks in the YouTube chats, I'm going to get to all your stuff, along with the listener mailbag on Twitter. I want to remind you the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walkers. Downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits. Hamilton Walkers is a great pregame spot. Or in the case of Saturday, after Illinois plays a bright and early 11 a.m. game against USC, what better place to get a late lunch, get a celebratory drink as long as Illinois takes care of business at Hamilton Walkers. Scratch kitchen, meaning everything is made from scratch, all the way down to the ketchup, which is really, really good ketchup. And you might be saying, well, what's the difference in ketchup? Trust me, you will just be able to tell it's not exactly Heinz. And you dip their very crispy, extra fried French fries. The steak fries there are phenomenal. And me personally always get a bone-in steak, the steak fries family-style side, usually some sort of green thing as well. The green beans are exceptional there. I can't recommend it enough, and it'd be a great spot for you to check out. Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits. Also, got to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. For life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well. Brian even texted me today about a tweet that I had last night, how Morez Johnson Is he everybody's favorite Illini? And he concurred with that statement. There are many guys on this team that we could say are a favorite, but it was good to hear from Brian, and it's a pleasure to have him as a pleasure to work with him, but really more peace of mind, I should say, that he's our insurance agent for both homeowners and auto. That's Brian Hansen, State Farm agent, online at brianismyguy.com. Also got to thank Luke Owen and his staff, owenbuildersllc.com, for your next home project. Go online to owenbuildersllc.com, check out a gallery of their work, and get a free quote while you're there. owenbuildersllc.com. And finally, Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call today at 217-841-4728. Get that furnace checked if you haven't already. This is probably going to be another 2-3 months of cold, garbage weather. I'm sick of it already, but you know what? I'm lucky that Dogtown already came in to check our HVAC system, and our furnace has been keeping us nice and toasty throughout these cold winter days. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend, at 217-841-4728. Let's see here. Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Appreciate them and appreciate you, the viewers and listeners. And don't forget the book, Illini basketball book, the 200 level Illinois Fighting Illini basketball fans journey. Jesus. Could I get the words out today? I'm going to be completely honest with you. I got a little bit of a cold. It's all up here in the head. A little bit frustrating because right before Christmas, I got a fever. Like the day before Christmas, 102. Really bad. But it was a 24-hour thing, nipped in the bud, went to Orlando, didn't think twice of it. The day I get back from Orlando on January 2nd, I noticed that my nose started running and my sinuses were kind of going. And I'm like, could I just be healthy? This time of year, man, there's stuff going around, and I apologize if it is making my voice sound a little bit more like that. All right, here's what we got in the chat thread. Hello to the folks that have popped in on this. It was unannounced. I didn't know what time I would go live. This is from Jacob in regards to Ace Baldwin, and I completely agree, Jacob. He says Ace flopped a bit too. Yes, he did. No wonder his coccyx, or whatever the tailbone is actually called, got a little bit banged up because his ass flopped on the ground like he was hit so very hard by Kylan Boswell. I don't sympathize with that. It's the same thing with Lucas Johnson, who I liked Lucas. But if he would have gotten hurt taking a charge, well, Lucas dims the brakes. And he would have admitted the same thing, I think, as well. The sulking on the sideline after. And I don't want to go after a young man too much. Big Ten Network didn't need to show it as much. But when we're up 30 and I see Ace Baldwin sulking, I don't feel that bad. I'm sorry. I know that's what they were trying to make me feel. They were trying to make me feel bad. Didn't have it in me. Sorry if that makes me cold and callous, but it was. This is really a roundabout way of probably saying it felt so good to kick their butts last night. It felt really good because losing 10 of 14 or 11 of 14, whatever the crazy number was, it wears on you. And really, Penn State, Maryland, those two teams have been, oddly, the bugaboo for Brad Underwood. And I'd like to think that what happened against Penn State last night begins to turn that tide. They're never going to be a terrible team. Penn State always seems to find some East Coast dudes that just play ball. But I'd like to think that we can beat them more often than not. And I think that the trend line would suggest that that's where you're going to start going, because they always seem to have like a dude, a bulldog in the backcourt that for whatever reason you couldn't quite match up with well, and they would go off. You can go all the way back to the Taylor Battle days. But obviously Jalen Pickett being a more recent example. And this team for Penn State, not bad, but boy, did we make them look not even pedestrian. We made them look god-awful. And that's kind of fun to be on the winning side of that. From Smitty, last night was like watching a video game. They can switch with ease, and guys that can play multiple positions. Also, no egos on this team. Guys seem to be happy with each other's success. Smitty, I agree 100%. To me, the communication on defense is super impressive. At an even more macro level, the lack of ego is also impressive, and maybe the most impressive thing of this roster construction. And Ryan, I'm going to get to what you said here about that in just a second. All these new guys, you never know how it's going to fit exactly. I long held the belief that 2022, the Big Ten championship season, was Brad Underwood's best coaching job because talent wise, I thought that team was pretty darn good, but not great. They had Kofi. Trent was really good his senior year. Alfonso Plummer was a nice pickup. Grandison was hurt for half of it. DeMonte Coleman. All that said, did that team really have the makings of a Big Ten champion? And yet they got it done. 15-5 record in conference. I'm looking at this team, which clearly is skilled, but that doesn't guarantee anything in this NIL era. The way they are playing together is a master class of coaching. And of course, listen, you know me from the podcast. I will criticize micro things of Brad Underwood. There are things that can bother me, but guess what? He's our coach. He's a really good coach. And I'm a fan, and there's certain things that you just react to, even when you admit and acknowledge that on the whole, they're really awesome right now. He is doing his best coaching job yet, I think, right now with this team. And the ceiling is still sky high. Of course, contingent on Kasparas's status, which forearms always leave you a little bit, how did that get hurt? And how is that going to get better? Is a simple rest? I don't know. They seem to be tricky, especially baseball, basketball. You hear a little bit less about it. But last night, it didn't matter. It will, of course, matter if that was something you had to do for the rest of the season without Kasparas, and I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. But last night, it didn't mean a damn thing because the rest of the guys picked up where you left off. And to see the cohesion of that team on both ends, the defense was the star of the show last night, but there's a reason he got 91 points. The ball movement, the unselfishness with which these guys play is off the charts. And I would agree, Smitty, that they seem to be happy with each other's success. We saw last night, Ben Humrichous in the press conference was praising young Morez Johnson next to him. He's 4 years older than this guy. And bear in mind, with the JUCO ruling, there's a good chance that Ben Humrichous, if he would like to come back next year, can come back. The way he's playing right now, sure, come on back, Ben. I know what you were doing November, December, but something is clicking for him now. So, yeah, good message there, Smitty, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. That they are a super likable team. And there's a lot of ways that maybe that wasn't going to be the case. You go into a season with all these new faces, and you got to get to know them, and maybe you'll latch onto them, maybe you won't. I'm latched onto this team. They're a lot of fun, and they're easy to root for. And I know what college basketball is now. I know what Illinois basketball is because it is an NIL-driven program. And I think for the better because of how Brad Underwood's navigating this. I thought the consequence of that was going to be less attachment to teams on a year-to-year basis. And on one hand, that's a bummer. On the other hand, the good news is if they lose a game and you aren't as attached to them, it just doesn't hurt as much. But when I'm finding out, just like last year's team, and now I'm starting to find out with this year's team, when they're successful, it feels every bit as good as most any Illini team I've rooted for. So I think that speaks volumes to how Brad Underwood built this roster. I think it speaks volumes to these players who all, as far as their personality and just their vibe, which is a very vague word, I understand, but they do emit a very positive kind of vibe overall. Easy to root for, and it's one of those you have a hard time picking who your favorite player in the team is, which is kind of what I got to in the listener mailbag. All right, here's from Mike. Mike says, first from Ryan. Ryan says, for all the ire, I think we as fans should be thankful to Matthew Meyer for teaching Brad an important lesson in roster construction. 100%, Ryan. You know, all these coaches are learning on the fly how to do this, Brad Underwood included. I appreciated how early on he was adapting to this clear change. Unlike a Tom Izzo who was pushing up against it, didn't want any part of it, Brad Underwood said, well, this is where it's going, so I'm going to do the best I can with it. Matthew Meyer was something we were all super pumped about. I don't think anyone begrudges Brad Underwood for making that move. It just didn't work out, and that's going to happen sometimes. But since then, there have not been any locker room cancers, at least from what we can tell on the outside. There haven't been. And I don't know what he added to his vetting process when going out and evaluating, do we want this guy or that guy? But whatever Brad Underwood is looking for in that regard is working. and all these guys seem to be good fits. From Mike, I continue to be impressed by Brad and his staff's ability to adapt in the changing landscape of college basketball. The guys they pulled in the portal and how they mesh is light years from 22-23. Excellent, Mike. Yeah, and kind of piggybacking on that point I just made there, I think that you hit it. It's just the difference 2 years makes. And this is all changing so rapidly, and you're going to start to see, well, the revenue sharing, which I don't know if that's in effect for basketball or if that's just football. I think revenue sharing is across the athletic department. You're going to see more money. You're going to see that money also trickle across all Big Ten schools. Maybe that evens the playing field, but it certainly feels as if Brad Underwood has a leg up on all the competition when it comes to NIL. And not just that, not just landing NIL talent, but landing NIL talent that actually works together. So let's talk about the actual individual players yesterday. Before that, quick sip of coffee. On a cold day, I got to have an afternoon cup. I go decaf, so I'm not up all night. But man, it's a spot. Ben Humrichous. Ben Humrichous. I always believed in him. You guys know that from all the podcasts. No, I thought it was a bad evaluation. We're 2 months into the season, or let's say a month and a half. Let's go up to the Missouri game and really the Chicago State game a week later, thinking this isn't good. It's not just that he wasn't making shots. He just felt disconnected on the court. Defense was not working. Despite his best efforts, it felt like he was lost on that side of the ball. Offensively, he'd camp out in the corner, and if he wasn't making threes, there was no other offensive game to speak of. Then Oregon happens. Okay. Seems to loosen him up. Washington, a follow-up. Okay, 2 in a row. He's stringing them together. Last night, his best game yet. And I think that Jeremy Werner made an important point about this. The points are one thing. The fact that he has 15 rebounds combined in the last 2 games is another. And perhaps even more encouraging because if you're 6'9", you got to rebound. And if you aren't rebounding, you're worrying that person, sometimes it might be effort. I never really questioned Ben's effort. But that something's amiss. If a 6'9" guy can't get a few rebounds a game, what is really going on? Well, Ben is all over the court right now in a positive way. He was attacking the basket a few times offensively. He was making dynamite defensive plays against Penn State. Was there a block? Maybe 2? He was disruptive on that side of the ball. And I don't know, if such a thing as a switch can be flipped, which we kind of saw with Marcus Damask, early December last year. It took about a month. He had the 30-point blowout against Florida Atlantic, a few off games after that, and then he got going again around Missouri and afterwards. Maybe that's just what's happened here. It was a little bit of a delayed start for Ben Humrichous, but dear God, he was awesome last night. 3 games in a row, he's been really good. If we can give Brad Underwood credit, because I was saying, hey, have him come off the bench. Let's try a Luke Goody role for Ben's sake, for the team's sake. Give him a different look. Well, Brad Underwood's insistence at starting him seems to have paid off. Now, Ben will have games where the shots are not falling. But the fact that he's actually defending and rebounding right now makes that a little less worrisome. Okay, so Ben's going to have a 6-point game sometime the next few, where he just scores 6. They aren't falling. As long as he's not a sieve on defense and he's active on the boards, okay, that's fine. You can live with that. That size is nice to have at that position for someone that is so often stretching the opponent's floor all the way out to the 3-point line. And I know that's the name of the game now. You don't often have your Horace Grant power forward types, but this is an absolute boon to this team to have Ben Humrichous being the Ben Humrichous that they thought he was going to be. They were finding a way to be pretty good even when he struggled. Now he's not. Had to start with him. 19 first half points. I think only 2 in the second half, but hey, you got to save some for the next game. Just impressive. There was a heat check 3 that damn near went in, and that would have been something, but really cool to see that. I will say this. If you were one of those that was really down on him, would we call this eating crow? I don't know. Armchair Illinois, which is a Twitter account, I think they were the ones that posted this, had a Ben Humrichous apology for him, and it was kind of funny. image that they came up with, and I know where they were going with that, but I thought to myself, wait a second, I'm not apologizing for anything. Not that they were asking for that, but we were simply calling out what we saw, and it was worrisome through 2024. The calendar year of 2024 was not good for Ben Humrichous at Illinois on the court. Chicago State was December 29th. No, it was beginning 2025. Go out west, something clicked. And that's okay. We'll take it because he is a huge part to this team if he can do that. Huge. Who else? Tre White. I say Morez is my favorite Illini. I don't know, man. I've been reflecting on this today. I feel so comfortable when Tre White is on the court. I know he's going to make a good play, whether it's defense and he's going to be disruptive, get his hands in there, or get a rebound, which he's super reliable on the boards, or offensively, it seems like anytime you might get in a bit of a rut, shooting-wise, or you're having trouble scoring, Tre's the guy that often goes and gets it. If it's not KJ, it's Tre. Often taking it to the rim. The occasional mid-range jumper, he's the only guy I really want shooting that. I guess Will Riley sometimes. Tre White, as I tweeted, is having more quiet 20-plus points, 7-plus rebound games than I've ever seen. He's not just getting good stats. He's getting great production across the board, like all Big Ten level production. I don't think he's getting the love yet because, again, he's doing it quietly. And it's amazing how, I don't understand how it is quiet because he's athletically really good. He's big, about 6'7". You notice him out there. Is it just the fact he's so reliable and consistent right now that it's just less flashy by virtue of that? I don't know. But I didn't know where we were going. Before the Wisconsin game, I tweeted Trevor and Isaac and said, what is Tre White on this team right now? Because a month into it, there were a couple of good games and then a couple of didn't really do a whole lot. Tennessee, for example, really quiet game for Tre White. A few games before that, he wasn't really producing at a high level. Wisconsin game, he goes off. And ever since then, again, the switch is flipped. He just gets it. You could almost look at each player and say, oh, that was the game where they got it going. Kasparas was from the start because he's just that dude. Kylan was probably, I think the Arkansas game was when he really got comfortable. I remember this was the first time I said, damn, I think Kylan is finally settled into what his role is on this team. And that was only what, game 4, 5? For Tre, it was the Wisconsin game. For Humrichous, it was the Oregon game. And that leads me to Morez Johnson. Double-double, 20-plus points, 20 points last night. It's one thing to be big. It's one thing to be talented. It's a completely different thing to have that sort of instinctive, just natural basketball IQ for someone who is a true freshman, but does not play like it. He is awesome. He's so easy around the rim. We could say they're just garbage buckets, but the fact is he is so kind of windy and bendy down by the rim that he could be directly under it and somehow find his way back up and over. He's going to make the layup. He is so reliable down there. And we see other guys on this team, like Kylan, who I love watching Kylan, but can struggle around the rim for whatever reason. We see Tomislav Ivicic sometimes struggle around the rim. Not Morez. So strong, so athletic, but so smart. And it's really fun to watch a guy who was a throwback, wouldn't you believe it, high school recruit who committed to Illinois back in his, sophomore year. Been committed to Illinois for at least 3 years. And now he makes it on campus, and he's every bit as good as he could have hoped for. I don't know about Big Ten Freshman of the Year because of all the great freshmen like an Ace Bailey and a Kasparas Jakucionis, who's, if he comes back healthy, is your Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Well, I don't know. Statistically, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey they're probably all first-team All-Big Ten caliber, and Kasparas certainly is. But if you were to expand that Big Ten Freshman of the Year thing beyond the guys who are one-and-dones, Morez is a throwback Big Ten player. It's really cool to have a big like him. And I am getting more encouraged. And I was worried about this a few weeks ago. More encouraged that you could have him and Tomislav Ivicic starting next to each other next year. I think things like that matter. These players might not ever admit it publicly, but if you're Morez Johnson, you're a 4 or 5-star kid, highly touted. Any place would have you, but Illinois would like to keep you. So you're going to pay the man, as you should. But you also need to say, dude, you earned it. You go out there and have a ridiculous plus minus. And I think that Brian Hansen in our text today had said the same thing. The plus minus of this kid is probably astronomical. I don't know if anyone in the chat thread has the means with which to look up his plus minus stats on the year. I don't know if that's even available by player for an entire season. But doesn't it feel like anytime Morez is in there, you're gangbusters. You're at your best. That's just an intangible quality that you don't see from freshmen very much. So likable. Just a dude. I love his demeanor. There's some freshmen that just, they're kind of stone cold killers from when they come in. Frank kind of had it. Morez, I think, has it. I like this sort of strong, silent type. They might not emote that much, but they got this quiet intensity about them, and I think that's what Morez has, and I like that kind of player. So whatever it takes in this transfer portal era for him to be a 4-year guy for Illinois, it's got to be that way. It's got to be that way. Leads me to a point before I get to Dre Gibbs Longhorn. I'll hit up Dre Gibbs Longhorn, which leads to my main point about continuity. Dre is awesome. Great analysis, Carp. Wow, he's awesome. He is. That edge was there last year. He got some meaningful minutes in the NCAA tournament as a defensive ace off the bench, hit 1 or 2 threes when he kind of needed it in your opening round game of the NCAA tournament. So he was getting playing time. He was getting valuable experience, but it's tough to play when you got Damask and Terrence Shannon Jr. in front of you that in those games had to play essentially all 40 minutes, if at all possible. And there was a little bit of a lull for DGL, maybe late November through mid-December. Let's call it a 3-4 week lull where he wasn't producing as much on the court. Man, Missouri game on. Because I thought he was really good in the Missouri game. I know his plus minus didn't say that, but he just happened to be out there when Missouri made that run, and I don't think it was any fault of Dre's. I just look at Dre and what he brings to the table. He could score around the rim. He could shoot the three. He is a capable ball handler. He is a hawk on defense. He's getting better at defense. Transition defense, unbelievable, the blocks that he makes. Every time I see that happen, I'm like, will he get it? Will he get it? That athleticism for a 6'2" guard to go up there and block layups and dunks. And the one against Washington should not have been a foul. I mean, just maybe he drew a little bit of contact, but just for the principle of it, it shouldn't have been a foul because it was too damn good. Love to see Dre coming into his own. This leads to my point. Overall, this team next year can return most of the key cogs. We weren't really thinking this way when the season started, and you're wondering after Will Riley scores 30 points, how many guys are going to go pro? Well, Kasparas certainly is a lottery pick and probably a top 10, maybe even top 5 pick. And that's what he is regarded as, and we've seen it with our own eyes. He is that good. That's a one-and-done guy, and that's a bummer. You can't have him longer than that, but you're going to make what you can with him this year, based on health, of course. But imagine next year's starting lineup that has Tomislav and Morez go too big, okay? And this is not Indiana, Malik Reneau, and Ballo. Omar Ballo. It's not that thing because those are two guys that just go down and bang down low. Tomislav can stretch the court. He can essentially be a 7'1" 4. We're already seeing these two guys play well together. So a starting lineup, imagine this if you will. Tomislav Ivisic, Morez Johnson. Yeah, I like that front court. That'll do. You'll go out and get someone else so that in case of foul trouble, you do have another big that can be placed down low because it's probably not going to be Kerry Booth. If we're just being honest about it, probably not. You got Will Riley on the wing. Oh, God, I don't know. I mean, Kylan's going to be back. Tre White's going to be back. Dre Gibbs Longhorn can be back. Guys, you can bring all of these guys back. And then just go out and find another dude. That's a really good team. From the jump. And a complete team. Good front court. Good back court. Strong wings, Probably got to go get another score or two, I suppose. I mean, it would be a little bit of patching things up, but it would be kind of fun in this day and age. I like all the new toys and everything, but imagine going to next season with all those guys returning. I would feel comfortable with that. Ben Humrichous, what am I talking about? Ben Humrichous would probably come back. He can now. That's another guy that you thought, well, he's gone. Kasparas is gone. Will Riley is gone. Well, right now it looks like Kasparas might be the only one that leaves. Depending on what Illinois wants to do, and depending on what other guys might consider. Damn, I don't think you could start Morez Johnson if you're bringing everybody back. I don't know, though. I kind of want to. Could you just go uber big and have Ben Humrichous be the 3? Probably not a good matchup defensively. I did see a little bit yesterday. Morez Johnson placed against Nick Kern. Had a few defensive possessions against him. And I thought, wow, are we trying to get a look and see if you can't play Morez defensively against smaller guys? You probably can, and Nick Kern is not a three-point shooter, so that made a little bit of sense. Can you get Morez to come back as a sophomore, as good as he is, and not guarantee him a starting spot? I don't know how that all plays now, but he'd be a 25-minute-a-guy game. You couldn't keep him off the court, and you can't keep Ivisic off the court, and you can't keep Humrichous off the court if he's shooting. Kylan, Tre, Will Riley, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. I mean, come on. If you get buy-in and you bring those guys back, you're winning the Big Ten next year. You are. Period. End of story. Guarantee it. Yeah, injuries can happen, but I'm just guaranteeing that right now. If they all come back, if you can do the 2-year plan, which I think was the initial idea for Brad Underwood, you're going to achieve a lot with this group. Because think how special, I know it's Penn State, but think about what they were doing last night. That's not normal. Something is really clicking right now. Even with the Kasparas absence, that was potentially next year's team that we watched last night. That's awesome. That's really exciting stuff. All right, so we did get a couple. Thank you guys for efforting this here. From Kyle, Morez total plus minus is 174. KJ's 220, Riley 200, Boswell 198, Ben 195, Tre 189, Ivisic, is 180. So he's right there with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th highest in plus minus. Okay. Well, I will say for limited minutes, that's really good. I mean, he was averaging maybe 15 minutes a game going into last night. That's only going to continue to tick upward. You got to get him minutes. God, he's good. He really excites me. Keep them all, Brad. Donors, I love you. You've been doing a great job bringing this talent in. We got to keep these guys because they're too much fun. From David, with Tre, it seems like he's often just in the right place at the right time, and he picks up 2 or 3 bunnies that pump up his points, and I mean that in a positive light. You're right, David. There is this instinctive part of his game where he is often right place, right time. Also, another thing with him, his body control around the rim is insane. Where Kylan is a bit like a wrecking ball going down there trying to get a layup, you see just how good Tre is of never speeding up too much when he gets around the rim, absorbing the contact, making the shot reliably. So really cool to see the ascension of him. He was a highly regarded recruit for a reason. That is a great evaluation from Brad Underwood and the staff, because how many of us, when Tre White committed, said, whoa, I can't believe we got the guy from that awful Louisville team that wasn't terribly efficient offensively and didn't really play good defense. We thought coming in that he was a bit of a project, a reclamation project that you'd have to kind of wash the stink off of the Louisville experience and make him your own. Well, Tre's even said he loves the accountability he gets from this coaching staff. He wants to be coached hard. You might have just landed a special dude as a player. So that excites me. All right, I went to the listener mailbag, and the question that I asked them. Oh, and real quick, Kyle makes this point about Morez's total plus minus, 174. He has over 200 fewer possessions than the next guy above him, which is Riley. So Morez, 391 possessions. He's already a plus minus 174. So what would that be per game? Difficult to average out. But Kyle, thanks for that information. That tells you right there that he is doing all of this in limited minutes compared to the guys above him. So he's just a positive impact on the court. All right, here was the question that I asked on Twitter today. Listener mailbag, which Illini basketball player's emergence has you most encouraged going forward? I put 4 options because that's all the poll will allow. Ben Humrichous, Tre White, Dre Gibbs Longhorn, Morez Johnson. The winner was Tre White, 43.3%, Ben Humrichous at 28%, Morez at 19%, and Dre at 9.5%, which is no slight to him because Dre's looked really good. It just speaks to the other 3 guys and how well they're playing. From Herb, Dre, he's the most experienced in the system, and his play has shown that. Plays fast and very smart in his minutes. Highest defensive rating of any player on the team, sans Kutcher. Yes, Ashton Kutcher's cousin. Or nephew? One of the two. Thanks, Herb. From Andrew, it's so fun to see Dre's used-to-be manic and kind of reckless energy being honed into an energy that has a major impact on the game in a good way. I don't know how to word it. It's just way more productive energy. Harnessed. You use the word honed, Andrew. I'd say harnessed, right? Whatever kind of verb you want to use. Corralled. Yeah, it's like you've got this kinetic energy and you're somehow getting it to kind of fit within the confines of what works at this level of college basketball. It's working for him now. It's that old adage of the game is slowing down for Dre. I think that's accurate. It clearly is slowing down for him. And because of that, he's probably a little bit less reactive and, just all over the place like we saw a few times last year and even a few times this year. From Ethan, I chose Tre simply because of the sustainedness, question mark if that's a word. We'll go with it. Sustainability, Ethan, that's what we want. The sustainability and length at which his emergence has been. Of the 4, he's been balling out for the Illini the longest. He's just an all-around badass. Ethan, I agree. I'll even go down to his tattoos, which look great. The dude's got a look. Pizza Hut parking lot kind of cliche it may sound like, but yeah, he looks like a guy that can knock a few heads. But I also like, in the same way that Morez Johnson, and this is me, not Ethan right here. Sorry, Ethan, I'll get back to you. I like the quiet intensity. I like that. You got a few dogs on this team. Like Tre, Dre, Morez. They're tough. And that's not to say anything. It's Tomislav Ivicic. He's tough. He's just such a skilled Euro guy. It's hard to throw that tag at him as much. Jake Davis is a tough guy. He gets out there. He had some great effort plays last night. There's a reason he's getting minutes. Kasparas is tough. And I hope that he gets back soon. But you don't need him Saturday, so do not force the issue. I don't know. I just feel like you got 3 badasses on your team. Dre, Tre, and Morez. I love what... 4. Kylan Boswell. Talk about great tattoos as well. Love the sleeves. If I could get a sleeve, I would. I just don't know how I would fill my entire arm with things that I would want. But, man, Tre, Kylan, 1A, 1B battle for best tattoos on the team. Ethan continues, I'm not the kind of person used to this, but he's an ice water in the veins kind of dude. I agree, Ethan. I think that in crunch time, Tre is not a guy whose blood pressure would go up at all. He seems very on the level. From Sweet Lou, Ben, only because Tre has cemented himself on being a consistent force, in my opinion. That's fair, Sweet Lou. When I was making this poll, I wondered if Tre was even fair to put in there because of how good he's been for over a month now. From Jacob, I voted for Humrichous because of his super slow start and high expectations we all had for him. He's finally starting to hit a stride, which makes this team even harder to defend. 100%, Jacob. It changes things. You're starting to see what they envisioned before the season even started. From Mark, honestly, I think White and Humrichous are most important to our success this year, but Dre's energy and tenacity are also super important. I love watching him and seeing him get a bigger share of the minutes. He's really finding himself as a player and is also getting his team pumped up at the same time. Excellent, Mark. I think the guys on the team love him. See their reactions when he gets a block. Yeah, they're like, what's Dre going to do next? Because he just has this, I don't know, for a guy that is still kind of working in limited minutes, I expect him to have one moment a game where I'm like, damn. And he more often than not at least gets one of those. From Teddy, I feel like out of the 4 listed, Tre has been the most surprising. I expected the other 3 to fill their roles like they have. Tre was a wild card coming from an absolute train wreck in Louisville. Him becoming the glue guy on this roster was not on the bingo card. That is a great post, Teddy. I agree with that for sure. Not on my bingo card. I thought, well, he's a better Ty Rodgers. I love Ty, but he's more than a better Ty Rodgers. He's a really good Tre White. Okay, that was lame, but he's all Big Ten caliber. That was not on my bingo card for sure. and he is your most reliable player. All right, this is from Matthew. This is what Ben is supposed to be. Tre is a bonus, hard worker who's really carrying a load and playing so hard. Dre pushed through really hard to show Brad he could be on the floor. He should be on the floor. Defensive stops, blocking against the glass, never giving up. From D-Dubs, Tre is the best player of that group, but Ben's shot will be the most impactful, I think. Fair? Fair. It opens everything up, no doubt. And it even opens things up for Tre when you got Ben making shots, as we saw last night. And Penn State was late getting out on Ben on a couple of those. But when you're 6'9", I don't know how well you can defend a 25-foot three from a damn near 7-foot tall shooter. This is from Dan. Easy to say all four of them, but I think Tre White does so many things so well that he's arguably our third most important player overall at this point behind the two guards, and he just fills in all the gaps when another player may not have it. Thanks, Dan. From Jared. Tre White, because what he does is quiet and most repeatable. Everyone is in agreement from last night. How in the heck did Tre White end up with 20 points based on how he operates? Important to have that guy. Yep, no doubt, Jared. From Matthew. That's Brad exactly as he preaches. Morez, he's my guy. He's exactly as I expected from heart, hustle, and muscle. Dude, Morez is putting the league on notice. He won't be outworked. Yep, excellent. David had responded to that and said, how about all of the above? And yeah, fair. I mean, listen, all four of these guys are playing good ball. Again, this is an eminently likable team. I mean, really likable. Easy to root for. It's cool. From Elena. It's got to be Humrichous. 2 weeks ago, he was an anchor. Now he's lighting people up and getting rebounds. Tre White's second, just a quiet assassin. And love Morez and his motor. DGL can provide you with instant offense sometimes. Thanks, Elena. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we're feeling good, right? Now let's talk about the potential not-so-good thing, which kind of shook things up last night. Kasparas, forearm discomfort. He went through warm-ups. He was dressed. Late scratch. Call it my old age. I say old. Advancing age. 38. Okay. Call it my desire to not be cynical. And I might be critical, but I'm not cynical. I do think that Illinois can have the world. There's no ghost or hexes or things going against Illinois sports. And it seems like we finally have the people in charge to make all of our highest aspirations for this program come true. I'm not going to freak out until there's a need to freak out. He's probably not going to play Saturday. He probably shouldn't play Saturday. This might just be a rest it and let it get better thing. And maybe it's a few games. Maybe he doesn't play at Indiana or at Michigan State. That's very true. I'm less worried about him losing a step when he's healthy and can come back. I would imagine if it were a break, Tommy John thing and like his elbow, they would have done the MRI and the X-ray. We would know that by now. We don't. And by the way, he had discomfort after Washington, I would imagine before they even got to the stadium on Wednesday for the Penn State game, that they had it looked at just to be sure, and they saw nothing, and yet, oh man, my arm's off. Okay, shut it down. Put on your warm-up. You aren't going tonight. Fair. I'm just not going to freak out until there's confirmation to freak out. All we know is he has forearm discomfort, and that he warmed up yesterday, and he was going to go until they said, it's not quite there. Okay. For what it is worth, just Jeremy and Derek, they are the best beat guys out there for this team, and judging from what they spoke about today on their podcast or last night on their podcast, they didn't gather the sense from Underwood or anyone around the team that this was something to freak out about. It's just a situation to monitor. Obviously, it's a big deal. He's a special player. Your ceiling is lower without Kasparas. Can you win games in the meantime without him? Yes. And I will add one more caveat to that as well. There is a benefit if you get a few games without him and you get all these other dudes making a positive impact, winning games. I think that only bodes well going forward. Same situation to an extent last year when Terrence was out for all the legal stuff. And then you see the other guys, well, hey, they're pretty good too. So when you get Terrence back in the fold, that increases your chances of a run in March. I think there's something to that. If that sounds a little bit pie in the sky, I understand. But it's not just me trying to find a silver lining here. I anticipate Kasparas will be back. If it were some crazy injury, I think we would have gathered that sense a little bit more by now, and we just haven't. So, fingers crossed. Hope it's not anything terrible, and that he comes back and he's Kasparas. Because if he is, this team can 100% win a national title. And it's okay to say that. If he is on this team, they can win a national title with the defense they play and their ability to shoot and their ability to get to the rim. They're shooting threes or they're shooting layups. And they're defending other teams at the rim and making it hard for them to make layups. And they're defending teams on the perimeter and making it hard for them to shoot threes. I like that recipe. I like it a lot. But get healthy, KJ. Take a few games if you need to. We'll hold down the fort. And then onward and upward when he gets back. All right, before I go, football real quick. Last time that I did a football podcast, it was before Gabe Backus officially announced that he was coming back. Well, he's coming back. They're all coming back. It is crazy, the retention rate of Brett Bielema's program. Not only that, but they get the punter from Purdue. They get a tight end from South Dakota State. Just a stellar offseason with a big bowl win right in the middle of that. Things could not be pointing more upward for this football program. Brett Bielema and his staff are playing this exactly right. A very targeted offseason, starting with their own guys, and they should be a top 15 team going into next year. Legit. And I will have the utmost confidence, even to the point where I know we're playing at Duke, and I'd rather play a scrub at home. But why should I be afraid of Manny Diaz and Duke when I got this Illini team and this coaching staff? Why should I be afraid of that? I shouldn't. I wish it were at home, but if they don't, in fact, buy that game out or just come to an agreement with Duke, okay, play it. Let's see what happens. I do want to say one thing, and I will echo this a few times before the season starts. They do not need to make the college football playoff next year. They don't need to win 10 games next year. I think 6 or 7, you're left wanting just based on everybody coming back, but you'd still be in a bowl. No, guys, if they go 8 or 9 wins next year, that's still phenomenal. It's okay to have high expectations. It is. But given how hard it is to sustain success at any football program, let alone this one, if they don't match the win total next year, that does not mean it's a failure. I'm going to harp on that many, many times. I truly think that it's worth repeating that they can have a successful year but not achieve the same lofty win total of this one. But hey, what the hell? I could be wrong. They go 11-1 and they make the college football playoff and they host a game in December right here at Memorial Stadium, at which point I don't think I need much more as a sports fan. Well, Illinois basketball national title. I need that. But for football, I wouldn't need much more than hosting a December game at Memorial Stadium. Could you imagine? And the funny thing is, yes, you can, because it's possible. It's entirely possible. So let's leave it with that. Saturday, I plan on doing the second half. It's going to be a little bit earlier, so noon against USC. We have 2 road games next week. I will be at the Michigan State game on the Sunday Martin Luther King weekend, so no podcast during that game. Hopefully, our luck will be a little bit better than the last game at Breslin Center, where we held the lead and then Michigan State just blitzed us in the last 4 minutes. But that's going to be a big-time matchup. And hopefully, let's just beat Indiana before that. They're playing better. I just don't know how good they are. And I'm excited to see Morez on Ballo. I am. I really am. And I just hope he doesn't foul out. Ballo is a beast. There's no doubt. But if you contain him a little bit, you're going to win that game. I just think your backcourt and your wing position is just so much stronger than theirs. So, first things first. USC, Saturday. Plan on doing a second half podcast at noon. And then I think it's next Tuesday or Wednesday at Indiana. I want to say next Wednesday. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for those that popped in on the YouTube feed. On your way out, if you could like the video, just like it. That helps us for people trying to discover us on YouTube. Got to thank Hamilton Walkers, downtown Champaign, for steak, seafood, and spirits. Got to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. And finally, got to thank Owen Builders, LLC. Luke and his staff, excellent at any home project. You can check out a gallery of their work at owenbuildersllc.com. Champagne Showers Podcast Network, appreciate them and appreciate you, the listener, the viewer, for tuning in. And we'll be back this weekend. Illinois basketball, baby. It's It's already feeling pretty exciting. And Kasparas, of course, is that lingering story. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Hopefully positive news. But I will say this. If it's a few games without him, this group right now, the way that they're playing, let's see what happens. And I think more often than not, you roll it out there, you're just the better team than whoever you're facing. And that's a credit to Brad Underwood, but also a credit to these players. They have come together in 15 games far better than I could have ever anticipated. We'll see you soon, everybody. It is the 200 level. Thanks, YouTube. Have a good rest of your night. And I don't know, go Penn State, go Notre Dame. I mean, if they could both lose, that'd be great. Bye, everybody.